I think one of my biggest takeaways was that I thought all the performances were really, really good, but I thought the book lacked meat.
Welcome to Critical Darling, the show that celebrates all the hot takes and big feels lighting up Broadway. I'm your host, Andrew Cole, and today we're lathering on some sunscreen and heading to the Jersey Shore of yesteryear as we bask in the glow of beaches. My guest host for this episode is as multi-talented as he is handsome. He's an actor, a print model, a fitness coach, a husband, a dog dad, an entrepreneur, and an all-around excellent human. We first met each other amongst the hallowed halls of Mark Fisher Fitness, and these days you can catch him, among other pursuits, splitting time between coaching online classes for the Speakeasy of Strength and curating weekend goods for Good Weekends as proprietor of Project Weekend, a luxury goods shop based in upstate New York. Ladies, gentlemen, and darlings across the globe, please help me welcome to the pod, Chris Crowthers. Hi.
Hi there. What an honor.
I'm so excited to talk with you, Chris.
I'm excited to talk to you too. It's funny listening to this intro, and I had recorded something a few weeks ago. I get so teary, like my eyes are filled up. My eyes are filled up with water right now.
Just like thinking about all the great things you've done in your life.
I guess so. Just nice to hear like someone else put it into their words.
You're very worth putting into words. And I tripped over a couple of words because I've been like out of the country for 2 weeks and don't have a lot of recent experience doing this. So thanks for bearing with me as we dive into the convo. So I want to start off with some questions to give our listeners and viewers an idea of your relationship to the arts. And the first one is, what are some of your earliest memories of theater, and how did you find yourself embracing it as a young person?
So I was involved with like choirs at church and at school, and I took like dance, like jazz class. Of course, I was like the only boy in the dance class in the third grade. My dad is actually a singer as well and has a record. Actual vinyl, and my mom plays the triangle and the tambourine on it, which is funny. It was like a group that he was involved with our church that they put out. So he like did some performances here and there, and then I did some shows in elementary school. Like I played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz in like the 5th grade or 6th grade, and then in the 6th grade I got cast to be one of the little boys in Oliver at the high school. It felt very cool because I was like on the stage with like some fancy folks, or what I thought was fancy folks. And that's kind of like how I got the bug, I think. And then like just kind of continued it and was in show choir in junior high and high school. I'm from Southwestern Ohio, and show choir is like a sport in that part of the country. I grew up not far from where Glee took place, and then did theater through high school and did, both at my school and then like I was lucky enough to grow up in a place that had a couple community theaters. So that's kind of like how I got the bug.
Oh my gosh, such a good path to getting the bug. I didn't know your dad had a record. Was it a solo record? Was he in a group?
No, he was in a group. Yeah. And it's like folk songies and like kind of like some like Christian rock from the 70s.
Like Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yes. Like
sure, like early Amy Grant.
Like Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog, like earlier than Amy Grant. We're talking like probably like early to mid 70s.
Oh my gosh, that's legendary. I need to look that up. So going a little bit later in your life, as someone who has performed professionally throughout many stages of your career, what do you find yourself either noticing the most or perhaps being most impressed by when you go see live theatrical performances today?
Yeah, I would say the thing I sort of pay attention to, I had the great opportunity when I was still doing musical theater to assist a director. So I was able to sit on the other side of the table and help with casting. Even if they weren't shows that I was going to be in, he would call me in just as like a second set of eyes. And then shows that I did with him, I would go away to do the gig, and I was the dance captain, the assistant director. So I was like the eyes while the show was running. So I'm always very in tune with people's tracks. So like what ensemble member number 2 is doing throughout like the entire 2.5 hour, however long the show may be. So that's always something I'm clocking as like, oh, this person is this person is this person is this person is this. And just like, that's what is most fascinated to me of how the map all works. Because I was a part of that. So it's like, even on a bigger scale where there's like usually more money and maybe more people, just to see like how the puzzle piece all works together.
I love that you said that, because it's something that hasn't been brought up on this show yet. And now that you say it, I identify with that a lot two. I didn't ever assist or direct like you did, but in the earlier part of my career when I was doing public relations for primarily Broadway tours, and I had to be in charge of the playbills and keep up to date with who was listed where and who covered what role and make sure that they were all notated accordingly. It became a little bit of a game for me whenever I would go see shows that I worked on or even shows that I didn't work on to think through, okay, these are really specific roles. Who in this company is covering which role and which ones might be covered by offstage company members? And I forget, did you see Masquerade yet off Broadway?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
You need to go see it and you need to tell me afterwards if your mind is as blown as mine was by how that show is covered, because I won't go into it in detail, but essentially they do 6 shows a night, staggered by 15-minute intervals. And basically there's 6 Phantoms and 6 Christines, one for each set of audience members. But then some of the other principals, I think like there's only maybe 3 Rowells and maybe like 2 Carlottas. They're going back and forth in between different instances of the show. And then you have to have your other understudies doing it. So it's always crazy fascinating to watch. I mean, that one's particularly complex, but really any Broadway scale production and the way that they have to cover the principal company members.
Yeah, I just recently worked with this woman who was in Sleep No More for 2 years.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We were on set together. We were shooting a commercial, and she like became my buddy for the 2 days. And I was like, I need you to start at the very beginning and don't leave anything out. Like, how did this work? Like, just the like interweavings. And she was like explaining it all to me because I was so fascinated by how that all worked. And she was like, yeah, this day I would be this track, this day I'd be this track, this. And I'm like, and you're not just like you're covering multiple floors and you're running around and you're doing the one-on-one things that they did with Sleep No More. So that's always just something that I'm constantly like clocking the entire time, which will come up in our conversations because that was something about beaches because it was one of the things that I like noticed right away with a specific person.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk about that. So as we dive into that, when we had been in touch a month or so ago and I invited you on the podcast, I had a list of shows that I still needed a friend to see with. And amongst a list, you picked Beaches. So I'm curious your familiarity with Beaches, the film, and just why you wanted to see this one.
I've seen the movie a few times. It's been a while since I've seen it. I meant to watch it before we had this conversation and just didn't get to it. And then I was like, but that's okay. I can just go from memory. So I was interested in seeing it also just because I know that it's had like a journey to get to this place. And there's been like many people that have come in and out of the 2 leading women, many actresses that have kind of come in and out of that. And then a dear friend of mine and ours is dressing Jessica Vosk. So I was like, I can go see Ashley Tim's show. So yes, let's go see that one and support her. So that's all. That was another reason why I was like, I know someone that's going to be doing all the changing of clothes. So I wanted to see that as well.
I love it. All really good reasons. And I'm
Yeah.
excited to dive into the conversation with you. So
Yeah.
I will go ahead and set the stage on it for our listeners. Beaches is the new Broadway musical adaptation of Iris Rayner Dart's best-selling novel, which inspired the beloved 1988 film starring Bette Midler and Barbara Hershey. Tracing the decades-long friendship of Cece Bloom and Bertie White, the story follows 2 women from childhood through ambition, heartbreak, and enduring devotion. After earlier stage incarnations at the Signature Theatre in Arlington, the Drury Lane Theatre in Chicago, and Theatre Calgary, Beaches has now arrived on Broadway at the Majestic Theatre as one of the few new musicals of the 25-26 season. The show features a book by Iris Rayner Dart and Tom Thomas, music by Mike Stoller, and lyrics by Dart. It's co-directed by Lonnie Price and Matt Cowart, with choreography by Jennifer Rios, scenic design by James Noon, costumes by Tracy Christensen, lighting by Ken Billington, sound by Kai Harada, and video design by David Bengali. Beaches stars Jessica Vosk as Cece Bloom and Kelli Barrett as Bertie White, leading a talented company of 19 and bringing this story to its biggest stage yet. And quick note on spoilers, we will be talking about the full plot of Beaches in totality. So if you haven't seen the film or don't know how it ends and you want to be surprised, pause this, go get tickets to Beaches, and then come back and listen. So we always like to start our conversations with a section called Hot Takes, which is where we unpack what we thought about the performances, the writing, the direction, any of the design elements of the physical production. So, Chris, I will give you the first word. Hit me with some of your hot takes on beaches.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one has to be the one and only Miss Jessica Vosk. Like, we'd be remiss to not lead with her. I mean, it's also fascinating to me that it's the first time that she's ever opening a show as a leading woman. Like, she stepped into
Is that right?
it is. She just posted it the other day on her Instagram. Like, she's led stuff, but she's always stepped in, like, into Hell's Kitchen, into
Wicked.
Wicked, and many other things. And I know that a good friend of mine is on the board at the Muni, and I was talking with her the other day about how the Muni's sort of mission at the moment is to help actors and directors and choreographers sort of like rise to the top. And she's done a few things there. I know she was in
She did chess there.
Waitress and she did Joseph and Chess. Yes. So like here she is getting able to like or being having the opportunity to like lead this entire company in such an iconic role to like step into the shoes of Bette Midler and like I would literally listen to her sing the phone book. And I don't even think they make phone books anymore. So pull out a phone book from like the early
Let her sing it.
1990s. And like I would like sit there and literally listen to her sing it. I thought she was spectacular.
She is spectacular. Let the record show that whatever you think about this particular show and this particular production, it's worthwhile to be able to get to see Jessica Vosk originate a role on Broadway, have a star turn like this, and just really kind of soak up how brilliant she is vocally, comedically, acting wise. I think she's phenomenal. I had the great fortune to see her at a solo Carnegie Hall show. I want to say it was maybe 3 years ago or so. Saw with a couple good friends, and I was aware of her, and I had seen some of her probably vocal performances on YouTube, but I don't know that I had ever seen her live in anything. And I was completely captivated by her. She had this one moment towards the end of the show where she went away from the mic and just sat on the edge of the stage at Carnegie Hall and sang, I think it was Over the Rainbow, it was some Judy Garland song, and just had the whole room spellbound in her hands. So she is that type of performer that can really light up a room and certainly carry a show. And I'm glad to see her getting the chance to originate a principal role on Broadway. Surely the first of many. Like this is not her only shot at this. We'll
Yes.
continue to see a lot of her for as long as she wants to do this.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed.
What were some of your other hot takes?
I gotta shout out. I have my playbill here. I have
Yes.
to shout out this ensemble member who I could not take my eyes off of, whose name I may be pronouncing it incorrectly, so I apologize to this human. But Zurin Villanueva,
Yeah.
she was literally on stage, I think, the entire show as someone. She was like the nurse. She was a backup singer for CC Bloom's character. She was literally, she must have changed her clothes a million times. And I just loved seeing like she had moments where she spoke more and she wasn't just like a body on the stage to just like fill the stage. I kept clocking her the entire time. This woman is like moving. Her show is so hard because she just was like changing clothes and back on and back off and like so fast. And she was also great. Like she could do all of it. And I just was like obsessed with her the entire time. So shout out to Zurin, who plays like, let me even look at this. I think she plays like several different, yeah, Janice Carnes and others. There's so many that they can't list them all. It just says and others.
Okay, so yes, Zurin, I was paying attention to her the entire time as well because she seems to be having the literal best time on stage with literally whatever role she's given. I'm pretty sure I got to see her. The only time I saw Tina, the Tina Turner musical, was when it was on tour. I got to catch it in Boston. And I'm 99% sure I got to see her in the role of Tina because she looked very familiar to me. And there was just something about her infectiousness and her enthusiasm for tackling literally anything given to her on stage that felt very familiar to me. So
Yeah.
I think the entire ensemble of the show is having a very good time. And it's actually, so I mentioned Company of 19 in the beginning intro of this. That includes offstage swings and covers. So like the amount of people on stage is actually probably closer, I would say, to 15 or so. And they fill out the stage very well for a relatively quote unquote small ensemble of a Broadway musical. They're all doing the most at
the
all
most.
times. And it doesn't really feel like they don't have enough people on stage, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, yeah, the ensemble is like they're doing everything because it's really just like Cece and Bertie, the two men who play the love interest, and that's the only two men that are on stage. Are
Yeah.
are the two, right? The ensemble is like filling in quite literally her backup singers, the moms of the two women, playing the teenage versions of them. Like they're doing literally everything. That is
Yeah,
not a
they
show where you're
are.
like in your dressing room, like kicking it and, scrolling on Instagram the entire time. You probably don't even see your dressing room until intermission,
They're
if
not
that.
using that equity cot
They are
for
not.
extended periods of time.
No.
So, juxtaposed to Vosk as Cece, Kelli Barrett plays Bertie. And I think I have seen her in things before because her name sounded familiar to me. And then when I was reading her bio, I think the most recent thing I saw her in was Parade. And she was very striking to me, particularly her voice. There's like this placement that she has in her voice and with some of the songs she's given. It hit me in my gut in a way that I wasn't quite expecting. And I found her to be a really great counterpoint to everything that Jessica Vosk was serving at because the character of Cece, for those that don't know the show that well, she is flamboyant, rambunctious, a troublemaker, a spitfire, larger than life. And they really need this Bertie character to be a counterpoint to that. It needs to be someone who's a bit more prim and proper, a bit more buttoned up, but still the type that you could see falling in love friend wise with the other person. And I thought they found that in Kelli Barrett, and I really enjoyed watching her through her evolution.
Yeah, I agree. She really held her own compared to Jessica Vosk. But I think that that was also, and I say that because Cece's character, to your point, is just like a much bigger character. So it'd be very easy for like that character just like steamroll the entire thing. And while Jessica is incredible, I thought Kelly really held her own in this role as Bertie. In the like, to your point, like proper, buttoned up, very well dressed, like kind of like Stepford Wivey looking in some of her costumes, and just like a little more sort of like proper, where to your point, Cece is a little more sort of like raucous and like raunchy, frankly.
Yeah, yeah, she is. You had also made a comment that one of your hot takes was on the use of the stage. So what struck you about that?
So that is a very large theater. It's where Phantom of the Opera was, right? And I've seen, now this is the second thing I've seen since Phantom has since closed, and I saw Gypsy there, and then I've seen this, and I feel like there just wasn't enough on the set itself. Like I wanted it to be fuller, and I think that they, like to your point with the small cast, they did do a good job with the people that they had, but I just like wanted more from the set. It's like a two-level set. There's like a platform that's, I don't know, probably 3 feet off the ground, maybe, that they use as like the pier that Cece Bloom, the little Cece, is underneath, which is like one of the iconic things from the movie with Maya Bialik, Blossom with her flower hat. Underneath the boardwalk. But then there was like this like mounds of sand and some like seagrass that was like always there that I found like a little distracting. I didn't mind the panels that they used. There was like LED, and they were like interesting shapes. It wasn't just like rectangular and like flat lines. So I liked that because it had kind of like ripply sort of like wave quality to it, which is also like part of there's a ripple and wave to their relationship as well. It kind of had this all sort of like watery sort of beachy vibe to it in its shape. So I liked that, but I just kind of wanted more. There were times where I was like, there should be more on set. Even when she's doing her own variety show, there would be like cameras, like they could have filled the set with that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I really feel the same way as a lot of the things that you were just saying. And I really like the nuance that you pulled out about the shape of the video walls and the projections, the video design elements that were included on them, because it's something that I thought about when we were watching the show too, that if you're going to employ video and projection elements, right? And again, let me call out the set design by James Noon and the video design by David Bengali. I thought this, for what it was actually pretty effective. It wasn't only I would say, one-dimensional locations that they projected and wanted you to believe that was the backdrop. The video design elements had some really neat kind of scrapbooky vibes to it, where at various points it wouldn't just be them projecting the background of the location where the scene was taking place. It would be visuals and illustrations of things that were evocative of that place. And I thought that was really
Yeah.
interesting. I do agree with you though, and I was thinking the same thing too, both during when I saw the Gypsy revival with Audra here as well as this. I couldn't quite separate in my mind if it was because I was so used to seeing the set of the Phantom of the Opera and the chandelier and just that gigantic production design in that space, or if it's because it's just a large space and it felt like it wanted something bigger set design wise, or both. But I did find that to be true for me too, that it felt like, for as excellent I think as the elements are executed on stage, I just wanted more. I wanted to see more on stage, and I wanted to feel a little bit fuller and more completely realized than perhaps it was.
The last time I was in that theater before seeing Gypsy was the mid 2000s, maybe like 7, maybe I would say. I used to be a Manny for a little girl whose mom was in Phantom, so I went to see it right before she.
No way.
Yeah, she was pregnant. She played Meg, and she was pregnant, and so she was getting ready to go on a maternity leave, so I brought the little girl to see the show, and I remember sitting in the audience and feeling like the space itself was big. Like, the theater is, like, tall, and it's, like, wide, and it's, like, what you sort of picture when you think of, like, a big Broadway house that's, like, an older one, and it has a chandelier there, and even watching Phantom, I remember being like, "I feel dwarfed by this just because of, like, the production," and I felt like I was in with this, it just felt like I was kind of looking into the void a little bit. Even though there was stuff around, it didn't take up the space like I felt like I wanted it to.
Yeah, for sure. The other element of the production design that I wanted to call out were the costumes by Tracy Christensen, because I thought that they were really well done. And there was this very, I thought, fun to watch color palette selection taking place where the CC character, she was very red coded, reds and oranges and magentas, and just kind of hearkening back to or suggesting the fiery nature of her personality, both her wardrobe and then I felt like some of the set pieces that were around her really just evoked that warmth and that color. And then the Bertie character, they have a lot of cool blues and whites and not necessarily pastels, but just lighter colors as, again, I think a direct counterpoint and juxtaposition to the other lead. And I thought that was really nice to watch and well executed. And also, it was just so fun. I mean, you mentioned our pal Ashley at the top of this, like the amount of costumes that both of these women go through, but particularly Jessica is really is quite Herculean in terms of the number of looks that she pulls off in one evening.
Yeah, and the number, I don't remember the name of the number. I'm looking at the musical numbers right now. Maybe it was the top of Act 2 where she was like the clothes were just, like, constantly changing, like, where
Yeah.
like she was, like, on stage, like, part of her variety show. I mean, it was like you blinked and, like, she was wearing something new. In fact,
Yeah.
I even missed the one reveal because I was watching the 3 backup singers because the girl that Zurin that I spoke at earlier had caught my attention, and I was like, "No, I missed the big reveal." But yeah, Ashley is working her took us off back there. Like, they're so fast. I mean, some of them are, like, seconds, and it's, like, head to toe, it's pretty impressive. And I do say too that, or I will say, I should say, that the costumes, because we're obviously in a certain period of time. We're looking at like 70s, 80s, mostly when they're the adults. And like the costumes didn't feel hokey to me. Like I feel like when you get into that kind of like hippie, because like Cece's character when she's at the like summer stock theater, her first like gig, like she's in like the leather vest with the fringe, and I was like, this could have totally been like very costumey, but I didn't feel like that was the case. And even the guy, her love interest, even his was like the jeans and the like flowy shirts, and he felt very much like an artistic director in the 70s at like a summer stock theater. And New England, you know?
He totally did. So Brent Thiessen plays John Perry, which turns out to be Cece's main love interest. And then it's Ben Jacobi that plays Michael Barron and others, at least for a time, is Bertie's husband. I thought those two guys were working overtime as well in a show that needs to pull together a lot of
Yeah.
different plot elements and a lot of different feelings. Like they were excellently cast.
Yeah, they weren't just their leading men selves. They were then like, changing costumes and part of the ensemble or playing these little tiny little bit roles or whatever. Yeah, they were like changing hats off and on. It was that execution, I thought of all of that, even like we mentioned earlier with the ensemble, I just thought was like so impressive.
Yeah, it was. Before I transitioned to Big Feels, the only other call outs that I wanted to make were the child actors in this show because there's a significant amount of stage time and plot weight, as well as just like entertainment value placed on these very young shoulders, and they're definitely worth calling out. So Samantha Schwartz plays Little Cece, and then the role of Little Birdie is typically played by Zaya Grace, but at our performance it was played by Joelle Gully. And then I think there was one other young girl that was at the very, very end, Nina. So once you progress to the
Oh.
very end of the plot, and then Birdie has had a child, Nina's played by Harper Burns. And I thought all of these young ladies were incredible, but you can tell that this Samantha Schwartz girl who plays the young Cece, the young Jessica Vosk, she reminded me a lot of like Mary Kate and Ashley from Full House in terms of just like the precociousness. I love that you called out Mayim Bialik in the original movie because there is something about that twinkle in the eye and wise beyond their years sensibility that you need in a young performer like that to really land these punchlines. And she's got a lot of them to land. It's a lot of fun to watch her do that.
Yeah, and they're, like, interwoven, and again, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, and I know that I'm pretty certain that there are flashbacks in the movie, but they're really, like, interwoven throughout the entire it's not just like in Gypsy where you get Dainty June and Baby Louise, it's like and then they go away and they're pretty much not in the show for the rest of the
Yeah.
show. But these were like all the way through the entire thing. And there were teenage versions as well. There were two women that played the like teenage versions, which I don't think is in the movie, if I remember correctly. But again, it's been a minute. There was a number with all six of them. So the three CCs and the three birdies. But yeah, I thought that the youngest ones were like great and like start the show off and to your point, and then the other one ends the show. I actually was on the subway with one of them home after we saw it, and I wasn't sure which one it was
Were you really?
because obviously they were out of their like beaches drag, and it was very obvious that that's the show that they were in, and I wanted to walk up and be like, I don't know which one you were, but you were great. I didn't do it, but
I'm sure they would have loved that. Sign your
I'm sure she would have
playbill.
really loved it. Exactly,
On
especially if it
on
was the
the
one that was playing Little CC.
Yeah, Jessica Vosk is really good on TikTok. She has some very good content about this show, but all the little duos or cameos or bits she does with this Samantha Schwartz girl are really, really funny.
Yeah, they're really cute.
So let's take a turn and discuss Big Feels, where we dive into the show's deeper meanings, themes, or what we left the theater thinking or feeling. Chris, what are some top of mind things for you as we start to unpack this?
So the two that I keep coming back to, obviously the whole show is about friendship and this friendship between these two women. But before I get into that, I think one of my biggest takeaways was that I thought all the performances were really, really good, but I thought the book lacked like meat.
Hmm.
And it's my understanding that the movie made some changes from the original book, and this is based more on the book than it is on the movie, is
Okay.
what is my understanding of like a few things that I've read around. If you're expecting to hear like all of the famous Bette Midler hits, you're not getting it. You're only going to get Wind Beneath My Wings at the very end. And that, of course, they had to they had to put that in there, or people would have been like, "What?" That's the reason why I came to see the show, which she does a beautiful job of. I just felt like I wanted more from the book because I thought that they were doing a great job with what they were given, but I thought that I left feeling like I just wanted some more.
Mhm.
is like my biggest takeaway when it comes to like the book itself.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that, and it's something that I thought about a lot after we were walking away from the show and continue to think about a lot with regard to what shows, I'm gonna put in air quotes, deserve to be made into a Broadway musical, and more specifically, what existing films or stories already existent in pop culture, again, quote unquote, deserve to be made into Broadway musicals. And I think it's tricky because I'll kind of narrow it down to some other shows that I was thinking about. You've got some movies that have music in it that are able to, I guess, get the rights for all of that music. This is maybe a bad comp, but I thought immediately of Xanadu. Like Xanadu's one where I actually haven't ever seen the film. I've just seen the show on stage, but they did a lot of work to get the rights to all of that ELO music. And I don't know if it was everything, but it seemed to be most of the big songs, including the title song. And you're like, okay, great. If I'm wanting to see the musical version of the movie Xanadu, I'm seeing most of this on stage. And then on the flip side, I think there's a show like Sister Act, which I loved that movie when I was little, and they made into a Broadway musical. And they didn't get the rights to all of the music that was in the movie, which in concept really disappointed me. But I actually loved that musical because I thought the score that they wrote for it was so good and so meaningful. And then maybe the most recent one that I saw that was kind of pretty close to Beaches, I think, in terms of like the camp value of it, the type of movie that it was, even though it was a comedy and Beaches a drama, was Romeo and Michelle. So they did Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion off Broadway last season, which the performers in it were great and the production design was actually great, but they didn't get any of the music from the movie. And so when you're waiting for like Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper to close out the show, you didn't have it. And so I kind of thought Beaches landed somewhere success wise between Sister Act and Romeo and Michelle. They did their due diligence and they got the rights to Wind Beneath My Wings because it would have felt, I think, very unsatisfying for audience members if you didn't get to hear that song. And they really pour a lot of production value into it. But to your point, they don't have any of the other songs to rely on. And you're calling out the book. I think I'm calling out the score, and that like it was fine. You know, I wasn't walking away being like, this is the best Broadway score I've ever heard, nor was I saying like, this is the worst thing. It was just, I didn't find it all that memorable. And so I think that they have a really hard mountain to climb in terms of getting audiences to feel the warm fuzzies that you felt from the movie without, in this case, all of the music, or as you're calling out, maybe all of the different plot elements that the movie relied on, because it's calling a little bit more on the book.
I think I just like wanted to care more, I guess. And like I still got like a little misty, but as everyone and you specifically know, it does not take much to make me cry. But I definitely got like I still got like misty, but I wasn't walking out where I feel like I had been like run over by a bus and then hit by the and then, like the bus just like kept backing up and then pulling forward and like walking out like heaving. Not that I was like expecting that either, because that's obviously one extreme of it. I wanted to care a little bit more than what I did because I think it's just such an interesting relationship of two people that are like so different that like sustain this like pen pal relationship for years and years and years until they finally meet in person. And then like adulthood and what happens as you get older and meet people. And I just wanted to like care a little bit more.
Yeah, I feel you on that. There were also, just pulling the thread a little bit about the book, there were a couple of plot points that I found confusing. So, some additional background, I have never seen the movie. And it was actually something that when we picked this show to see, you were like, have you not seen Peaches? So, I thought it would actually be good that one of us was going and having seen it, one of us wasn't. I knew roughly that it was about, I knew a Bette Midler type, right? And I knew that it was a tearjerker at the end. So I had an assumption that one of the main characters might meet an untimely fate, but I didn't know much else other than that. And for someone who didn't have experience with the plot, there were a couple of turns in some of the characters, particularly both of the guys, and then Kelli Barrett's character at the end of Act One. I mean, maybe we'll start with the guys. The Brent Thiessen character, John Perry, he's like not interested in Cece when they're at summer stock together, and it's pretty clear that like he preferred the Bertie character. But then fast forward several scenes later, years have passed. He shows up at one of Cece's shows and he just has the hots for her and like can't do anything but get with her and then get married. And I thought that was underdeveloped of, well, why did you in the not too distant past put a very hard line between a romantic relationship? And then all of a sudden, I guess because it's just how in the book and the film this plot progresses, like these characters get together. And then similarly with Birdie at the end of Act One, there's this scene where both of the couples are vacationing together, or I think maybe they're at Cece and John's house. They're basically hosting Birdie and Michael. And there's this sort of cat and mouse game that's happening between the two female leads, and there's a little bit of competition and jealousy that's arising. Birdie, Kelly's character, is just made to have some really hard turns where she feels done dirty by Cece and she feels sort of unfairly cornered. But then the very end of the first act is like, but I love her and like she's my best friend. And like I found myself just really struggling to like hang on to the few bits of plot that they were telling us were true because it didn't seem like a natural progression of how those characters would have acted.
Yeah, going back to the John Perry character, and I can't exactly remember where it is in Cece's career where he like comes back and is like, now I do like you and I have the hots for you and I want to do all these things. But I remember it was like her career was like taking off, if I remember correctly, of like when that happens. And then so you like had to kind of know what you were getting yourself into. And then you're all of a sudden like, I can't with this like stardom anymore. And like feeling like he's not on the same level as her or whatever the feelings were. That all just felt very like jarry for me. And then to the point that you made about the like when they were at their house in like Malibu or wherever, and like the argument kind of started over some glassware.
Hmm.
Where she was like, this tacky glassware, someone did this come with the house? And she was like, nope, I bought it. And that's kind of like what started all of it. And I was like, and I know that it was like building up more to that point, but I was like, we couldn't have found something better than glassware to like kick off what becomes this sort of like argument and sort of fall between the two women.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of those elements that are just like, how did we decide that that was the jumping off point to discovering more serious things about the plot? The other thing that I struggle with too in this, and this is not a comment on the young women that play these roles, but I find kids in shows difficult. And what I mean by that is it's very rare that I see a child actor in a full scale Broadway musical and I find that their performance matches the tone of what's needed. And again, this isn't to discredit these young women who are supremely talented. They have more talent in their whole body than like I have in my pinky finger, but whenever they're on stage, you just kind of get the sense they are hitting their marks, right? Like they're saying these really funny things, but there's a bit of a disconnect between, I think, what they're meant to do, which is seed the emotional depth and history of these two characters. For some reason, the way that they're directed, the way that they're written, it really just felt to me, again, like the Michelle Tanner punchline, which is so charming and funny to see. Like, I'll watch that all day long. But it didn't really, for me, plant and establish, I think, what it was supposed to do, which was just this real depth of friendship and real nuance and shared history. It felt very disconnected to me, the way that this was written and the types of lines and stagings that they gave these young girls to do, that they were executing very well what they were told to do. But I don't think that the way in which they are used in this show is additive to the overall emotional weight. I thought that Jessica and Kelly were working overtime to sort of establish that mature friendship relationship with, and it felt like the younger girls were in a bit of a different show.
Especially the young Cece. She's really establishing that character from whatever age she is in that young role of like, I mean, however old she is, let's say she's 10, she's like using language that she should not be using as an adult, right? She's like
Yeah.
already cursing and like all of that and like stealing. I think she even says a thing of like stealing jokes from like a comedian that she's on the like doing the shows at the Jersey Shore with. But yes, but then it's like, it feels like that's the thing, right? Hey, here's this line, say this funny line and say it this way. And like, that's kind of it. And then the two women then are sort of in their other, I mean, they're like literally in another era of their life. But the thing that sort of came up in my mind when you were just talking is it's like, I loved that the kids were around on stage a lot because it reminds you, as a kid, you don't really give a fuck like what people think about you. You know what I mean? Like we don't have that at a certain age. And obviously once you turn into to a teenager, then that like all changes a little bit, especially now. I love the fact that the like the vulnerability of those two little girls were kind of like always around on stage, like reminding you to just like kind of always keep your like younger version of yourself like close to the surface.
I love that. That's a beautiful reflection. And I think, interestingly, with these two characters, both the younger and older versions of them, you sort of see the CC one is the one who is unapologetic in who she is and knows exactly who she is. And she encourages others to be who they want to be. And then the Birdie one is certainly more repressed and hasn't been raised in a way to feel like she can color outside the lines or be something perhaps a bit more boisterous. And so I think that is very tender, to explore that at any age that they are. And honestly, like in terms of like big feels, like it really is the big feel that I take away from this show is that best friends are rare and special things. And I think that it's really nuanced, really poignant, the way that this relationship develops. And then, of course, very tragic as it gets towards the end of Bertie's storyline that you've got people in your life, hopefully, who you can go through many seasons with. And there's something about just like the fleetingness of the human experience that is definitionally part of the human experience. And when you get to those valleys of life, and then in some cases to the end of life, it's much more palatable and meaningful if you're able to do those seasons with people who have been with you on the ride through many of those seasons. And so I definitely do take that away from this story and this show that's a very precious and rare thing that like not everyone get in life, and it's nice to have that reminder that it is really important.
Yeah, and that's I think the thing that I've kind of been like thinking about the most since we saw it a few weeks ago was like, who are those people? And it doesn't even just have to be with just one person. Who are those relationships where like you would literally drop everything? She's literally like at her TV show, like getting ready to go on air, gets this call that like Birdie is not doing well, and then just like literally drops everything and flies away. Which like you have to, I question that sort of like I'm like, what about the repercussions of all of that? That's a big thing. But then, like, who are those people that you would quite literally like drop everything to go help or to go take care of or to be there for? You were just mentioning like going through seasons of your life. And like, I've been having a conversation with this particular group of friends of mine who we all met in various forms, being performers and being actors and whatnot. And like, none of us are doing that anymore, really like full time. But we've all been through ups and downs and relationships and marriages and births and all of that sort of stuff. You find those people that you like want to like hook under your elbow and be like, let's just thank you for choosing me to go along this ride with you. And there's other people in my life that I feel the same way about. So it's been having me take like a little bit of an inventory of my friendship, not being like, well, you're no good and pushing you away, but just like, who are those people that like show up for you, who say your name in the room when you're not in the room, or that those relationships you'd be willing to quite literally drop everything for.
It's such a unique thing, and I feel like we're at similar ages and stages of our life where we have enough to look back on and enough to look forward to that I start to have these sort of existential thoughts in my mind about what is a life well lived, what makes life worth living. And you're hitting on something that I really feel deeply, which is it's not necessarily about the destination or accomplishing, quote unquote. It's about who you are getting there with, right? Who is alongside you in this journey. And that in and of itself, sharing those relationships, those times together, the ability to be there for one another when you need each other, that is in and of itself the destination, which is really, really special. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good segue to go to the final section of our show, which is Should You
Yeah.
See It? This is the part where we both offer our final verdict and rating by sorting the show into one of four distinct tiers. I will tell you what those tiers are. The first one is nah, which means the show doesn't land. Catch it if you're curious, but your time and money might be better spent elsewhere. Meh, which is truly a mixed bag. The show has some nice moments, but not quite enough to stick the landing. Yas, which is a hearty yes. It delivers, it entertains, and it's well worth seeing, even if it doesn't totally change your life. And then hell yeah, which is a full body standing ovation. Run, don't walk. This is why we love Broadway. This rubric is built to foster conversation, not scorekeeping, and it reflects Critical Darling's mission to treat theater with both honesty and affection. So I will, for the last time, give you the first word, Chris. What rating would you give to Beaches?
I feel like I'm between the yas and the meh a little bit because I think that if you choose someone to go see this show with, it is like so special to you and you like turn it into like a date night. And it doesn't even have to be romantic. Like if you choose your like best friend or like your, elementary school best friend is like coming to the city to visit or whatever, like this is the show where you should like go to dinner, put on something cute and like experience it with someone that like you just adore that has seen you through the seasons of life. I think then you're going to have a great experience. I also think, and I think where I steer more towards the yas is getting to see Jessica Vosk like lead a Broadway show as the originating character. Literally, like just her singing the songs is like worth it for me. Like the concert was great. So that's where I steer like closer to the yes. And also I will say if you go with your like best girly or best friend or whatever, there's a thing in the lobby where you can get your photo taken and then they put all those pictures on the scrim at intermission. So like you're just also like to your point of the like the scrapbooky sort of like projections, that was another moment where I was like, that is really, really sweet. And if you like went with like some dear friend of yours and you like got a picture of the scrim where you're like on there and seeing the show about friendship, like that to me is like chef's kiss, cherry on top of the sundae.
I love it. You're a Mias.
Yes, yes.
Which we have had that rating on this show before. I am giving this show a nah, but with the caveat, if it's about Jessica Vosk, it's a hell yeah. So I am in a weird, even further disparate rating than you. Like I said at the beginning, she in general is just the sparkliest of sparkles. If you like her and you want to see her originate a role on Broadway, this is a hell yeah. Overall, it's a nah for me because of some of the adaptation qualms that I referenced earlier. This production, I don't think for me gave much of a defense for this to need to be a Broadway musical. I actually would be really interested to see what this show would be like as a play, perhaps with some music, because once you get to some of the very final scenes that are quite somber and quite sad, my understanding of the film, again, which I haven't seen, but like those moments are just so tender and so tear jerky. And when you're in a film, you can really be like up in the performers' faces and see that emotion. That whole final arc really lost something for me that I don't really felt like I got the true sadness and the true tear jerkiness of it. So that's why overall it's a nah for me. But I will say too, I was actually thinking about this. I'll name check one more show. My husband and I went to go see the Nashville tryout of Dolly, the Dolly Parton musical last August. And I actually saw it with my parents. And so when we were driving away from it, my mom was like, "What did you think of it?" And I was like, Mom, I was like, do you want me to like say like what I thought of it as like, 30 something gay male New Yorker who sees 50 Broadway shows a year? Do you want me to like tell you what I think audiences will think of it and like how it will do? And she was like, I guess both. And I sort of went on this whole, pulpit about like, just because this show didn't hit me where I'm like, yes, it's the best thing ever, doesn't mean there's not an audience for it. And I think that it's very smart of the producers who are working on this show to prepare and shepherd this story to the stage. And even if it doesn't become the New York theater elites top must-see of the season, doesn't mean there's not a very big audience for this, right? Like
Yeah.
part of the goal of getting to Broadway is just so that you can say like, I had a Broadway run, and then going on to touring productions and licensed productions. This show has a lot of life and value. And I'll actually be really interested to see what this show does in future iterations, because I think because of the size of the company, which is relatively small for a musical, and I think perhaps maybe being staged in some more intimate venues, it might actually make a little bit more sense as a regional show than it does as like quote unquote again a Broadway musical. So those are my thoughts on that.
And it's interesting because like we knew the person that I was sitting next to, and she had like a very strong emotional reaction at the end, to the point where she like was like, "I'm so sorry that I'm like I'm so worked up." And I was like, "Don't apologize. I'm glad that you're like having this a moment for yourself." Really like grew up on the movie, has a sister or a best friend that like maybe has had some, I have no idea, but like she definitely like went on the journey. So to your point, it may not have hit us as hard as it hit her, obviously, but I think that there was like still something there, at least for me. And I think that it will do really well in like on tour. I think like if they could market it towards like bring your bestie and like, bring your bestie to the beach or whatever the thing may be. You're welcome beaches marketing, if we just came up with that for you. And in regional theaters, I'm just thinking of even like regional theaters that I had the opportunity to work at. And I'm like, this would be so lovely there. Somewhere by the beach or even in the round could be really interesting as well.
Yeah.
Like feeling like you're really a part of the like circularness of their relationship and of their friendship. So yeah, I think it does have like a good set of legs to move around the country and the, not just the US, but all over the place, I think. Because when it comes down to it, it's like it's truly about relationships and friendships.
Yeah. And everyone can relate to that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Chris, if our listeners want to connect with you or learn more about what you're up to, where can they go to find you?
You can find me on the gram at Mr. Crowthers, but it's MrCrowthers is my personal Instagram. And then, as Andrew mentioned, my husband and I have a shop upstate New York. I'm in Narrowsburg, New York. The shop is called Project Weekend, and our Instagram is projectweekendny.com. That's just the Instagram handle, and then projectweekendny.com is the website, and we do shipping all over the place.
That's amazing. I will link to all
Yeah.
of that in the show
Thanks
notes.
so
So,
much.
listeners,
Thank you.
definitely check it out. And, Chris, thanks for always being just a game theater date. I love seeing shows with you and
I
always
love seeing
reconnecting
shows
with
with you
you.
too, and let's do it next season.
We will. We will. All right. Have a good one, friend.
Thank you, you too.
All right, my darlings, thank you so much for listening to this latest episode of the show. Critical Darling is produced by me, Andrew Cole. Artwork is by Eric Empsch. Editing is by JH Productions, and music is by Stantown. Want to extend a special thanks to my guest co-host for today, Chris Crowthers. It is always such a delight spending time with you and gabbing about literally anything, particularly theater. So thanks for being on board. And as always, a very special thanks to you for listening to or watching this show. If you enjoyed this conversation, please consider sharing some of our clips on social media and giving a review to this podcast wherever you happen to get your podcasts. And be sure to tune into the next episode when we will be breaking down the Broadway revival of Joe Turner's Come and Gone. I'll see you next time.